This is Join Us in France, episode 52. Hello, I'm Annie, and I noticed in the last couple of days that the Join Us in France travel podcast is a year old, and it crept up on me, and I didn't even think about it until just now. So, woohoo! I guess I could indulge in a little reflection on the past year or whatever, but I'm going to keep it short. It's a new year, it's a new season, and a new direction for the show, and it's all good and all exciting. I know some of you are wondering about Elise, and I'll talk about it some more at the end of the show, but don't worry, Elise is fine, and I hope she'll come back on the show as soon as her schedule permits. Today, I'm very happy to introduce Marion Clignet, who is a great cyclist. Now, before you start wondering, why is she interviewing a cyclist? Well, she's going to give us a lot of wonderful tips for people who want to come visit France on a bicycle or do a sports vacation. And there are a ton of people who do this. So Marion is a great cyclist and athlete. She has a lot of medals to her name, and I'll just name a few just to whet your appetite. She has silver medals in track cycling at the Olympics in 1996 and 2000. She has 5 gold medals at World Championships in track cycling, but she's also got medals in road cycling, a world record, and she was awarded the National Medal of Honor in France, which not very many people have. So she is truly an outstanding human being. And she's very modest about it all. And isn't that how it works? You know, the high achievers who win all the serious events, they brush it off like, it was nothing. But then if I win a bowling game, you'll never hear the end of it. So she's just amazing that way. And the stuff she's going to tell us about the Pyrenees and who you might want to hire if you want to do that sort of tour is just unbelievable. So if you want to contact her to get a hold of her to help you with any of this stuff directly, you contact her through her website, which is marionclignet.com, marionclignet.com. And I'll also put a link to her site on the show notes on joinusinfrance.com/52. But also, if you look at the show notes on your podcasting on your phone, which you're probably listening on the phone, you'll see a link right there, and you can click on it, and it'll take you right to it from your phone. So that's very nifty. Okay, let's hear the interview with Marion. Well, Marion, it's lovely to be recording this interview with you.
It is, and it's nice to be inside since we don't have a great day outside today.
That's true.
Unusual in Toulouse.
That's true. It's been rain, and nothing but rain all day. But the rest of the week was lovely.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Can't complain. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? I mean, I've known you for a while, but just as an acquaintance. So it'll be good to hear a little bit about what you do and how you became a cyclist.
Okay, well, so my name is Marion Clignet. I was born in Chicago, and I just found out at Christmas time. This is funny because I always get a new piece of information every year when I go see my parents for Christmas. They live near Paris. I was conceived in Africa, which probably explains why I like hot foods. And I like racing in the heat. I mean, real heat.
You like that?
Hotter it gets, the more happy I am. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I was born and raised in Chicago, and one fine day at the age of 22, for some unexplained reason, I fell to the ground and had a grand mal seizure. So I was whisked off to the hospital and told that I had epilepsy and that I would not be allowed to drive for 1 year. I was also told that I shouldn't talk about having epilepsy. I shouldn't tell anyone. I shouldn't tell employers, my teachers, my friends. I should basically, that basically the Marion I was the day before I had the seizure was not the same Marion I was the day after. So,
which must have been really shocking.
Well, I was furious with the neurologist because I didn't feel she communicated very well on the subject, and I think it is important that your entourage know what epilepsy is, how to react when you have a seizure, and she was telling me just the opposite. So then I was put on a medication that basically knocked me out for 6 months. I lost 11 kilos, slept 19 hours a day, and ended up dropping out of my last year of university because I just couldn't carry on, and I wasn't that motivated anyway by university at that point, and it would have been nice to just put it on hold and come back to it, but I had other things on my mind. So at the time, to pay some of my university studies, I was working as a program director in a fitness center. that was about 30 kilometers away. And because I could no longer drive there, I
So
started
30
riding.
kilometers in miles, that's what, 50 miles or something?
30
Maybe
kilometers.
45, maybe?
No. It's,
it's the
less.
other,
It's the other way around.
It's the other way around. Sorry.
It's like 15 miles.
Yeah,
maybe.
you're right,
15
right.
miles.
Yep.
15, 20 miles. So all of a sudden I was riding 60 kilometers a day to work and back because
You couldn't
I
drive.
just had to do that. So I started to get excited about it because it was re-giving me a sense of independence, since I couldn't
Sure.
drive and the buses and trains are never on time anyway.
Yeah.
Because this was out in a rural area, it was important that I be independent on my mode of transportation. So I'm going back and forth every day. And one day, a guy that I worked with, whose name is Steve, asked me if I was training for a bike race. And I said, no, I'm just riding to work and back. And I had this big, ugly bike that I bought from a policeman used through the American version of Le Bon Coin, just on the ads in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And
Craigslist or something.
Yeah,
Back then it was
it was just
something
the
else,
ads in the newspaper, in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Washington Post
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
And it was, by that time we were living in Maryland. I was attending the University of Maryland, and so it was this big green ugly bike full of grease, and it was a 10-speed bike, and it was way too big for me, but I didn't know the difference, so I just pushed the seat all the way down. And just I would give myself little challenges, see if I could leave later and still get to work on time. So I'd have to ride faster to get there, and I was really enjoying it, just pushing harder. And so this guy Steve says, well, if you haven't tried a bike race, why don't you come and try one, because you look like you're pretty fit and there's a race going on Sunday. Why don't you just give it a shot?
Sunday, why not?
Okay. Sunday. This Sunday? Yeah, this Sunday. Okay. All right. So I'll meet you at the campus, University of Maryland, at whatever time, and we'll do this race.
Yeah.
So it was what they call a criterium, which is this was 40 kilometers around the same 1.8 kilometer loop. So there was a sharp turn, a little uphill, a downhill, and then kind of a sweeping wide turn.
Okay.
So I get there on my beat up bike, bright orange wool socks, tennis shoes, a t-shirt with the sleeves cut off, a braid sort of half done and the other one kind of half limp. And
You
then,
must have made quite the impression.
oh my goodness. I get to the start line and there's all these chicks decked out in their multicolored lycra suits with all the
Sure.
sponsors flashed on of them. Bikes were custom made, and they are all just checking me out
Wow.
on the start line going, who is this, and what sky did she fall out of? And I'm thinking, oh, shit. I've never ridden next to anybody. I've only just ridden to work and back on my own. So, a Peloton was sort of a new concept. And
a Peloton, explain what that is.
a Peloton is a group of riders riding together, often elbow to elbow, knee to knee. So you're touching each other. And God, if I caused anybody to go down, that wasn't going to go unnoticed, especially on that day. So
True.
I didn't want to be responsible for any crashes. So as I'm sitting there on the start line thinking, well, I'm either going to go off the front or off the back. It's going to be one or the other. So because, I was fairly strong, I had been doing a lot of strength work, I put it in the biggest gear I had. So at the time, that was a 5312. That means the cogs, the developments that you're using. And when the gun went off, I just went to the front and hammered it as hard as I could, just pushed and pulled as hard as I could.
I believe that. Knowing you, oh my goodness, when you were 21, that must have been quite a sight.
It was, I think it probably was more about per my attire compared to the other ones. I'm in tennis shoes and these bright orange wool socks, and everybody else is in their cycling gear. And every time somebody would try to ride up next to me and pass me, I would accelerate because I was worried. I mean, it was for their safety. I was worried I was going to take someone out. So, and then every time I come through the start-finish line, I hear my friend Steve saying, Marion, draft, get some cover, get some cover.
You're like,
what is he talking about? So I'm looking up at the sky and I'm like, well, it's sunny. There's nothing falling out of the sky. So what do I need cover from?
Yeah.
And then he starts screaming at me to grab a wheel. So I'm looking at my front wheel and my rear wheel going, well, my wheels are fine. What is he talking about? And then, he would yell something different each time I came around. Spin, turn the gears. So I am spinning.
He was being super helpful, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. So, here by the end of the last couple of laps, I think my tongue probably started hanging out and my knees, I was probably riding like John Wayne because I was getting tired of pushing this big gear. My knees were starting to flare out. And then the last turn, the girls started to sprint. I think 2 or 3 girls came around me and I ended up fourth, and I was totally psyched.
That's amazing.
Because, yeah, I mean, this was something new to me. And the girl who won, I remember, went to University of Virginia in Charlottesville. So I was sort of like the ultimate groupie. I went up to her and I was like, oh, wow, that was so cool. How could I improve? All right. First thing, you should never wear underwear under your chamois. It just doesn't look good in it. It's going to cause problems. There's chafing and all that. I'm like, oh, okay. And then she
Good
said,
advice.
you could actually change the whole thing. I mean, you know, your attire, your shoes, get a real bike. And I was like, yeah, okay.
You had a lot of weight. Yeah, I mean, you had a long way to go that you could improve on.
Yeah, what
easily.
I call technical doping. I mean, getting a real bike after that was worth $5,000 an hour.
Yeah.
So basically, she went through this whole list, and I was like, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So I started training with a group of guys, and they started, you know, taking me under their wing and told me about spinning and getting some cover and grabbing a wheel and all these technical terms. And one thing led to another, and before I knew it, in 2-3 years' time, I was invited to a selection process at the Olympic Training Center. So I went there for a training camp and then worked my way on to the national team. And my goal in 1990, so this was 3 or 4 years later, was to make the world's team for the U.S. And that would have been in Ghent, Belgium in 90, or actually might have been in Japan. I think it was in Japan. So, you know, the coach basically told me what I had to do to make the world's team. I had to win this race, be on top of it in X amount of races. So the season, you know, we went through the season and I was there for every race. I was on top of it. I performed well. Mm-hmm. We went to race the Tour of Norway, which was a big international women's race at the time. Unfortunately for me in the airport, I did have a seizure, and I was doing a speaking tour at the time in the U.S. I had been on Good Morning America, Morning News, something or other. I mean, all the morning talk shows, talking about epilepsy and how important it was to communicate about it and that it wasn't taboo and blah, blah, blah. And that I was riding my bike and I was doing fine.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were just starting off with the molecules and you had to take your tablets 3 times a day. Now they have long-lasting ones that you can take 1 or 2 times a day and it lasts 12 to 24 hours. So I would often forget the midday dose, and we were traveling. We had been stuck in an airport for a while, and
when you travel, it's really hard to comply with medication.
Yeah. So I just forgot. I had a seizure. The coach thought I was having a heart attack, but his physio was actually brighter than him and said, "No, I think the symptoms are a seizure. She probably has epilepsy, and you might have overlooked it." So. Anyway, I went through it. We spoke. Everything was okay. The next day, we had a team time trial. We won, so that was good. I was able to put in my effort. And,
awesome.
And, we went through the rest of the race. Everything was fine. And I asked him again afterwards. I said, so, are you going to, give me a higher standard of criteria? Do I have more to prove to you because of the seizure, or is it okay? And he said, well, let's just see how the season goes. I think everything should be all right. So... So I win a gold, silver, and bronze at nationals, which were the ultimate test. Did really well. And then everybody on what they call the long team gets called into a room, and the coach selects the final team that is going to the World Championships. And because I had such an outstanding season, everybody in that room thought, you were going. Myself included, that I was going. He goes down the list and my name doesn't get called. So I'm thinking he forgot or, something. So I go over to him and say, well, is there an issue? Did you forget something? Forget my name? And he couldn't look me in the eye, started looking down at his feet and sort of kicking the ground and saying, well, I can't take you to the Worlds because you have epilepsy and you'll be a risk to the team. Oh. So my first reaction was to headbutt him like Zidane did at the World Cup soccer cup.
You did?
That was my wanted to. My first instinct was to do that, but then I thought, well, over that summer there had been 2 French girls that had done some racing in the U.S. and I had talked to them and they said, if you want to come and race with us, we have a team in Brittany. Feel free. So I just went to the payphone and called them and said, listen, my season's finished here. Do you guys still have races going on? And they said, yeah, come over. There's a bunch of races in August that are pretty cool to do. And, you're welcome to join us. So I went over and did all these races and really enjoyed it, and ended up doing one more international race before flying back to the U.S. Bumped into the French, what they call DTN, which is the national team director. And I told him, look, I have 2 passports. I have French nationality. I have American nationality.
Right, because your parents are French.
And I was born in the U.S., so I was born with 2 passports.
Right.
So, and I told him, I haven't done the Olympics for the U.S., so that gives me the freedom to race for France, for the Olympics or the Worlds or whatever. what do you think? And he had seen me race at this race, and I'd done really well. And he said, yeah, not a problem.
Wow.
I said, okay, well, I'll be ready in September if, there are training camps or whatever. I'm just going home now to get my stuff, and I'll move back.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving to Brittany because that's where the most cycling and most races were at the time. It was
Lovely
a bit
place.
of it's a beautiful place. It reminds me a lot of New Zealand. It's very green, a lot of quiet little roads to ride on. It was a bit of a shock coming from the U.S. to there because
I bet.
I was just moved from this big town where
Could you
stores-
speak French?
Yeah, I spoke French. I didn't speak a lot in the U.S. with my parents, despite growing up in a French household. I'd always kind of rebelled against speaking French, which, I regret now, but that was, just part of it at the time.
You have to rebel about something.
Yeah. So, no, I spoke okay and, just found an apartment on top of an old water mill so I could hear the water churning through the mill
Wow,
at
pretty
night, which
cool.
was kind of nice. And it was a small village, like 200-300 people, and it was a big shock from, living in a big town metropolis in the States and having grocery stores open 24 hours
Oh,
a
yeah.
day. And actually the hardest thing for me to get used to were the store hours. And everything closing between 12 and 2 and then closing at 7.
Especially back then. I bet even in
Yeah.
the big cities, that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere
Yeah.
it was the same. And I'd go to races on Sunday and then forget, that things were closed on Monday and I'd have no food on Monday. So I started raiding my neighbor's garden, who was convinced that he had some sort of rats or des taupes, moles,
Moles, yeah.
And he said, dang, they've been going through my carrots. It's like, it's amazing. And I'm like, do I tell him? Or so I think he might have secretly known. But anyway, that thanks to my neighbor, I managed to not starve for the first part of the season.
Hooray for gardeners.
Yeah. So anyway, just having epilepsy motivated me to push myself harder. And I pushed so hard, I ended up riding myself to 2 Olympic silvers, 6 world titles, breaking
Yeah.
a world record. And,
You-
and just,
yeah.
pushing hard. And
You're
even,
very modest, but you are awesome.
well, thank you. So, I pushed hard. I fought for the French women to get the same prize money as the men in terms of what happens is when you win a world medal or an Olympic medal, the federation gives you a prime. It's basically a victory prime, we call it. And they were
Yeah.
giving the men 5 times more than they were giving the women. So I fought for it and was able to get that leveled out. So now the women get the same.
That's great.
But there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
In a lot of sports and a lot of media attention, especially in women's cycling. But I think it exists across the board. And so anyway,
Women's sports in general, are...
yes, are less visible,
Yeah.
are given less time, but
Yeah.
we're working on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully we can change that. So after about 4 or 5 years of living in Brittany, I got it got old to me to be known as the cyclist and just be, offered cycling things. I needed to see some other things going on, and I came down to Toulouse to race. There used to be an international 3 or 4 day race for women in Toulouse, and so I came down for this race, and then I really liked the Southwest. I liked the ambiance, and then I had seen that there were a lot of movie theaters who were actually showing movies in VO.
That's
And,
true.
Yeah.
VO means English.
Original version, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was pretty happy about that. And when I had gone through the Place du Capitole in Toulouse, I'd heard a lot of people speaking English, and it just seemed there was a lot more going on culturally. It's a university town. So it was going to give me a little bit more to see and do than Brittany, which is a lovely place, but I just needed to change.
But more sedate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I found a club the following year and ended up moving to Villemur-sur-Tarn, which is a nice little town about
Beautiful,
40
yeah.
kilometers north of Toulouse. That was challenging, though, because I was in and out of the airport a lot going to races. So it became a challenge for me to come in and leave my car somewhere and then go away or find people who could drop me off. So I ended up moving in a little bit closer to town. And it's actually a great hub because where I live, I've got access on the bike to the Gers, to the west, to go for rides. We've got a little network of paths all around here. So we can go from Cornbarieux to Pibrac just by a little network of trails,
Right.
and then go to the forest, to the Boucan,
Yeah.
forest, the Boucan, via these trails as well. So for mountain biking, for running, for hiking.
Yeah, you're
It's
in a
all
good
quite
location here. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I work as a coach, a health and fitness coach, it enables me to use that network too to work with the people I'm coaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
today I am still riding a little bit, although at the moment I don't have a bike. I organize a bike event.
What do you mean you don't have a bike?
I
Not
don't
at
have
all?
a bike. No, I've got a cyclocross bike, but I don't have a road bike. So
I see.
So, and I do have a mountain bike, but I don't have.
So you have two
regular road
bikes,
bike,
but you don't have a
but
bike.
I don't have a road bike.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, well, a road bike, I mean, something that has enough gears to get you over the Tourmalet and all those big
Right. You
mountains.
Need, yeah.
I need that kind of bike. But
Yeah.
so I organize a bike event every year in May. This year it's in the first weekend of June. The objective of the ride is I take people over my old training roads. It's mostly in the Gers region. And the big objective of the ride is to raise money to build a gym for some kids who have severe epilepsy. There's a school in Ligevin, which is right close to here. I'm sort of the marraine, which I guess in English you would say godmother,
Yeah.
of the school. And these kids have won what they call the French Adapted Sport Championships before, because these kids are having anywhere from 3 to 30 seizures a day.
Oh, goodness.
So it's what they call a pharmacoresistant epilepsy. It's an epilepsy that medications just up to now have not worked very well with. They take a lot of medication anyways, which I don't really understand, because I've met some of the kids who are taking up to like 98 pills a week.
Goodness.
Some of them for the seizures, so some of them have lowered a little bit the amount of seizures they've had, but they're leaving other side effects. And if they had a gym facility to practice sports in, that in itself could probably lower the seizure threshold a little bit more. So that's what I'm hoping, is to build them a gym indoors, because a lot of them have strobe effect seizures. So when the sun comes flashing through the trees, it causes sort of a flashing strobe effect, and that can provoke seizures in some kids.
So indoors is better.
The idea is to build a gym and to create a pole research pole de recherche, a research center, inside the gym, to show, with a certain protocol, to show, to get this project off the ground, and to show that sports done at a certain level, maybe a certain heart rate, a certain type of sport for kids with epilepsy, can actually lower their seizure threshold.
Wow.
So that's the objective. So every year we run this race, and we also educate the public on epilepsy, on seizures, what to do if someone has a seizure.
Yeah.
There's a 40, 80, and 130 kilometer route. And because I absolutely hate trophies, because all they do is collect dust, I met with a local chocolate factory.
True. You don't have a big trophy
I have some stuff up there, but they're more like sculptures or original stuff that they gave out as trophies. Those I keep, but the trophies I gave away just because they're ugly and they just collect dust. So what we did was we went to see the local artisanal chocolate factory in Lara, and they make us chocolate trophies. So
very nice.
So the
Very
winner
nice.
gets a chocolate trophy, and then every participant gets a little sample of their chocolates in their little goodie bag at the start.
Excellent.
And
that's really good. And so you raise money that way.
So we raise money that way.
Will donate, or maybe there's a
there's a fee to enter the race, and they actually get a lot of goodies with that too. They get a jersey, a lunch after the ride, and then some little chocolates and some stuff like that. And they participate in a really well securized race.
I hope some of the listeners will come and participate in that.
That would be really fun.
Yeah. And you have a Facebook page for that?
I have a Facebook page called La Marion Clignet, because that's the name of the race.
Yes.
And there's also a website that they can get a link to on that page, because it's a bit long.
I'll put links on joinusinfrance.com. So this is going to be episode 52.
Okay.
So if you do joinusinfrance.com/52, you'll see the links to Marion's stuff. Yeah, to the ride and your website and whatever else you want to put on there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else?
Yeah. So since this is primarily a tourism kind of podcast, can you tell us a little bit about people who come to France touring on a bike, or maybe racing, or doing whatever?
Well, I see a lot of people arrive in Blagnac Airport with their bikes, and they can ride from the airport, into the Gers down to the Pyrenees. Or there's an American who actually just opened up kind of like an auberge de jeunesse in Colomiers, and she is a former Tour de France racer herself. She raced one of the first women's Tour de France's.
Cool.
A lot of people stop off there because it's quite cheap. It's an auberge de jeunesse, but it's a really nice place to stay. They have a great restaurant, and she can store bike cases while they go and ride off. And she might have, by now she's probably put together some maps to the best way to ride down to the Pyrenees, etc.
Oh, that's great.
You can do all kinds of stuff on your bike. You can either stay in a certain area, like Argelès-Gazost is one of the nicest areas to stay to ride your bike because it's at the foot of a lot of big mythic Tour de France climbs. So you've got the Soulor, the Aubisque, the Carasquel, the Tourmalet, and then from the Tourmalet you can zip over to the Col d'Aspin, the Orquette d'Ancizan.
So people would go and stay in that village?
Yep, and then they can go and do all these rides.
Do rides which take the day, or...
That'll depend on their fitness level and
how
fast they climb. But you can do 1 to 3 climbs a day. You can do more. You can ride across the Pyrenees. You can start in Gruissan and ride all the way to Saint-Jean-de-Luz.
Wow.
Riding across the Pyrenees. And there's maps on the internet. If you Google ride across the Pyrenees, you'll find a map.
You're going to find maps.
And then there's organized groups who actually do this where they take your bags for you. They follow you. They organize the hotel, the meals and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because it would be difficult. I mean, if you just up and go with your bike,
you've got your bags and everything. Yeah, you
have to ride with your backpack.
Yeah. So you can either organize it. Yeah, I mean, some people do it with panniers and all that, but I find those dramatic to have to haul up a climb. But there are organized events. There's a lot of them during the Tour de France. People come over to ride and follow the Tour de France and then watch stages as they go.
I see.
There's a lot of different companies who do that. I was doing it at one time and the company stopped, so I haven't done it since. So I don't really know. Yeah, I wouldn't know where to send people today, honestly, just because there's such a wide spectrum of groups, and some of them are really big. Some of them, actually, I do. There's a guy named Marty Jameson, who was a former professional cyclist, an American, who was one of the first Americans to live in Europe full time and race. Marty has a really good tour because he also puts the accent on tasting the local foods and eating well as you're riding. So it's Marty Jameson Cycling Tours. It's Jemison. And he does a great job. Yeah. And he's based in Girona, Spain. So it's not far.
So it's nearby.
Yeah, it's nearby. And he does various tours, actually. He does different areas in France. I think he's done a wine-based tour. Then the Tour de France. He's done some stuff in the Dolomites in Italy as well. So he does different stuff in Europe. So you can you can ride through different areas, and
that would be really exciting. I think. I mean, it's a wonderful way to
see. I mean, you really see things on your bike that you don't see in a car.
Yeah.
You miss out on a lot of things in a car, and often when you're driving, you're just looking ahead. You don't look to the side, and there's a lot of stuff that you just don't see.
Are there people who ride the Chemin de Compostelle? Do it on a bike?
On a mountain bike? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Maybe not. This is just a question that popped into my head.
I think there could be, and there could be people who follow the sort of the same path on their road bikes, but I haven't heard of it.
So, and you do so many things.
There's some really good cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and stuff like that here as well. In the Pyrenees. I often go to Plateau de Bay. We leave at 7. We're there by 9. Cross-country ski 2-3 hours and then come home. We're here by 2. So it's a great, and when you get to the top of the Plateau de Bay, you can see the whole chain of the Pyrenees. It's just absolutely breathtaking. So when the snow's good, that's quite nice.
So what would you say is your favorite place to ride? If you could go anywhere in France, where would you maybe go?
The Pyrenees. I mean, it just really is. There's the roads are harder than in the Alps. It's a little bit more rustic. Yeah. Oh. It's because they're steeper. They're not as cut and as polished as the Alps, and I just find the people more sincere, more real. It's less, the Alps has sort of a bourge side to it. It's they're a little wealthier. I don't know. I just think the Pyrenees are a little bit more down to earth, down home, and there's some great hikes and runs to do as well in the Pyrenees, as there are in the Alps as well, I'm sure. But I just know
but
this area
that's
more.
the area that you know. And so, would you have to race in these places? You wouldn't have to join a club or anything. I mean, you could just go.
No, you can just go on your own. And
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of Anglophones who have set up little touring groups or triathlon training camps, or just come and visit, and they give you little pieces of information. I'll have to give you some links too. I know
if there are people that you
yeah.
know, I'll put the links on the
Yeah,
website.
yeah.
This gentleman in Girona sounds good.
Yeah.
Especially if you know him, that's a very good way.
Mm-hmm.
So, any good stories, something funny or something, interesting that happened to you when you were riding? Did you ever get stuck anywhere? How often do you have to change a tire?
Well, sometimes you can have 3 flats in a day, and sometimes you won't have a flat for years. So
do you carry stuff?
Yeah, you carry a little tool kit, that has, now they've made tubeless tires. So you have this cream that I call chantilly, which is whipped cream.
Yeah.
And this stuff that you put in, actually, if you flat, you put this cream into the tire, and you spin the tire so the cream sort of sets against the rim and blocks the hole. And it's sort of like a glue almost, and then you can pump your tire back up, and you're fine. So
and you're good. But then, can you keep on riding on that?
Yeah. You pump it up again, and you can ride again. And now they have these little CO2 cartridges too that you don't have to pump like a madman. You just undo the CO2 cartridges. Although there is an art to using them, so you've got to make sure that you don't waste them all trying to get the air in. So I've had
Did you get accidents?
I had an accident. The worst I ever had was, we went to Mexico before the Barcelona Olympics to do a high altitude camp. So we were in Toluca, and I had just gone back to the car. We were doing a 5 or 6 hour ride, and I had just gone back to the car to get some food for everybody and water bottles. We were all taking turns doing that, and my hands were full. I was riding no-handed. And as I came back up to the group, somebody touched wheels, and there was a big crash, and I went flying. Everybody went flying, and I ended up breaking 4 ribs and puncturing my lung. And it was, sounds awful. It was a bit dramatic. I got back on the bike because my first thought was, the Olympics are around the corner. This can't happen now. This is not possible. So I got up. I mean, I knew there was definitely something wrong, but I just thought, it's a shock to fall like that. It's the adrenaline, it's the nerves. Just get on my bike and calm down. And one of the guys who had fallen had kind of uncorked his shoulder, so it had just come out of socket. So we thought his clavicle was broken. So he went in the car, and the coach only had room for one person in the car. His bike went up on the roof, and I said I would ride. And so 3 of the guys started. One pushed one guy, the other pushed the other, and then the last one was pushing me. And I couldn't breathe. I was just, and I was,
it would hurt so much.
I had 2 ribs that were actually completely out of line, that were broken. So, and I didn't know it at the time, but so I was just trying to suck it up and bite my tongue and tell myself it was okay. And one of the guys said, I think you should change places with, what was this guy's name? I can't remember his name, the guy who crashed. Christophe. You should change places with Christophe because you really don't look good right now. Your face is kind of going green, and just don't think you should be on the bike. So we stopped. We put, one of the guys went back and told the coach that I should be in the car and that the other guy should ride. So we had to switch places. So, and the other guy felt really bad because he was sort of at the start of the crash. I mean, I can't say it was his fault, but anyway, he got on the bike and I got in the car, and I started to whimper because I really was in pain.
Yeah.
I got screamed at by the coach, who said that wasn't going to get me anywhere. So we get back to the hotel, and of course the team doctor was out suntanning, and she couldn't be bothered. So I went up to the room, so she comes up and starts squeezing me around the ribs. And, you just have some intercostal muscles that must be torn or something. And
no X-ray, no nothing.
No, she just said, well, maybe we'll go to the hospital after lunch. And so I tried to turn over on my side, and I was just in so much pain. I was not doing well. And the girl I was sharing a room with knew, that I was a tough cookie. So she went running into the hall screaming and said, you guys need to take her to the hospital. This isn't right.
Something's wrong with her, yeah.
So they finished lunch anyway, and then we went to the hospital. And there we are with the doctor who comes over. He did the x-rays, and he puts my x-ray up, and he takes the pen out from behind his ear, and he starts going 1, 2, 3. And I said, what are you counting? And he said, your broken ribs. And he said, and look at this one here. This one has gone into your lung, and your lung is starting to collapse. So,
that's terrible.
Yeah. So he let my lung pretty much, he said, we're going to leave it for 24 hours. It may come back on its own, but if it doesn't, then we're going to have to stick a needle in it while you're awake without anesthesia because we need you to breathe at a certain time. I was like, oh, God, I hope I don't have to have that. So next day I was told that we did have to do that because the lining, the plèvre, the lung lining had collapsed as well. And they had to kind of go in with a crochet needle, grab the lining and pull it back out to the side. So I think I managed to let out a blood-curdling scream of every swear word I knew in every language because it really is painful.
You know more than average.
Oh, I do, yeah. I have a photo somewhere of this. What they do is they stick a tube in your lung in the beginning and they put it into a big mason jar and that's where all the blood and the pus that's fallen into your lung gets vacuumed out of. So they vacuum out all the stuff in your lung for 24 hours.
Oh, great.
Yep. And then they pump your lung back up again. So
that sounds awful.
Yeah, it
sounds like you'd want to die.
Fun.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I think I stayed about a week in the hospital. And then I basically had to keep myself from laughing, sneezing, coughing, or whatever for months. I mean, it takes...
Or breathing hard, probably.
Breathing hard. It takes about 6 weeks to heal. And what they had done for this high altitude camp was we had the road team there and then we had the track team, and 3 weeks at a time. And the road team was going to be going back the following week, and they wouldn't let me go back because of the pressure in the airplane. They thought that would attack my lungs. So I basically won an extra 3-week trip in Mexico with the track riders who were showing up the following week. And it actually ended up being beneficial because the high altitude helped stimulate the red blood cells to work a little harder, and my bones healed a little bit faster than they would have otherwise. So, cool. And I managed to keep, the fitness that we had worked hard on. So it in the, at the end, the negative sort of turned into a positive in that way. And then, my season was
athletes
all right.
tend to be really, they ignore pain anyway.
That's what you're always taught to do, and it can be a good thing or a bad thing. The bad thing is that sometimes you have a fracture and you keep pushing away the pain and you don't realize that you've been running on a stress fracture or whatever because you're so used to, pushing the pain away. Yourself, So,
yeah. That would be really difficult.
Yeah.
So is there like a culture to this riding community? What is it like to find yourself with a bunch of other riders?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends if it's a competitive group or it's just a group that wants to ride together for fun. The competition group is pretty serious. Egos fly and people are into it for themselves and they want to be first and blah, blah, blah. And it gets old after a while. But there's always the excitement too of seeing how far people can push themselves. When you watch the Tour de France or you watch the women's Giro d'Italia, because the French don't have a women's Tour de France yet. There's just a one-day race, but
right. And you have to tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah,
because that's
So no, it's always cool to see how far the human body, man or woman, can push themselves in an event. And then there's touring groups. There's people who just meet on a regular basis to ride together, and there's a little race going on within their outing because they all push each other, and they get to a climb and they want to race up the climb, but then there's a sort of unwritten agreement that everybody will wait for each other on the top of the climb, which is nice. So it all depends on the ambiance of the group. It can be really fun. It can also it can get ugly if it gets too competitive. It's nice to just lay down the law and say, okay, we can be competitive, but we can also be nice to each other, wait for each other on the climbs. If somebody gets dropped or they have a mechanical, we wait for them. So with the group that we have going, we try to do that and instill those.
It's really fun when I go around to villages and whatever in the spring and summer. You see groups of riders
out,
and they're mostly
older men.
Yeah, older men and sometimes women.
Yeah, we're starting to see more and more women.
I see a lot of groups, and sometimes they set up these elaborate picnics or ravitaillement.
Ravitaillement. Yeah,
so
refreshments.
Yes, but it's pretty elaborate. Yeah. I mean, some of these things, there's quite a lot.
Yeah.
And in some places, they will find a nice place in the shade on the city square, and they will just all, lie down or hang out, or they even drink wine.
Yeah. I mean, that's sometimes the Australian group I had come over, they were basically doing a wine tour. I mean, it was a gourmet wine tour. We'd stop at lunch or at the top of a climb, and there was sandwiches and all kinds of a spread for them. And then when we got back to the hotel, they would have 3 or 4 beers, 3 or 4 packs of chips, and then they'd have some sort of cocktail before dinner.
Well, but
and
I
then,
guess it's because they, if they ride a lot,
they
can get away with,
with
You wouldn't do that.
amount.
I know you wouldn't do that.
Well, I tried to accompany them the first day. Just I had 1 beer, and then I had wine with them all through dinner, and then I had a whiskey after dinner. And I was like, dudes, if I do this every day, you're going to be the guide, and I'm going to be following or trying to. We're going to reverse roles here. So I just tried to keep it to 1 glass of wine or a glass of whiskey, but not the whole bit.
So is that something you're even interested in doing, guiding groups like that?
I've done it in the past, and it's it's a job. I mean, it's a métier,
Oh, sure.
and that's what Marty does. So those are the kind of people that's the kind of group that people will contact to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, locally, we get to have a little group that rides together, and people can join in on those rides, and that's not a problem. The last 2 years. Basically, because the winter weather was so wet, I just got tired of riding in the rain. So I started running.
Right.
And I made a bet with it. Well,
in the rain.
Oh, yeah, in the rain. It's much easier to run in the rain and the mud than it is to ride. You don't get as cold. You warm up quicker when you're running.
Is that right?
Than you're riding. Well, yeah, because you've got the wind factor. And if you're going downhill on a bike in the rain, you're going to get cold quicker than you are running.
Correct, yeah.
So my training partner and I made each other a bet that we could run the Paris Marathon in under 3 hours. And we trained like mad women, and we ran the Paris Marathon in 2:55 or 56.
Awesome.
So that was good fun. And actually, since then, I've really enjoyed running more because it takes less time. It's a more efficient way to get fit and stay fit. So when the sun comes out, I'll start riding again.
Yeah, you could be running for an hour or riding for two
hours.
Thing.
Yeah, it does take more time.
Yeah.
I was giving spinning classes for a while. People would show up with their bikes and a trainer, and I was giving them coaching them for an hour. We'd put the music to it. It was sort of like an aerobics class, but on a bike. So we were doing having some incredible sessions, and I did that 2-3 years ago. I was doing 5 hours a week, and it was a great way to get fit as well. And an hour on the trainer was about as good as an hour running because it's so intense and it's just condensed into that hour time. So your fitness tip is, if you don't have a lot of time, run maybe? Yeah, if you don't have a lot of time, run. If you've got knee or ankle issues, there's a lot of trails that you can run on soft ground. If you haven't run for a while and you want to get started again, you can start with 30 minutes and alternate between walking and running, a minute, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. The important thing is to stretch, to do a lot of work on your core strength, the obliques, the abs, everything that supports the back. That's really important. And food has the biggest impact on your health, whether it's physical or mental, or any sort of medical, issues you have. Just anything that you buy in a box or a package is going to have some sort of nasty stuff in it. So it's better to just eat whole foods as much as you can. As many green vegetables are going to be the best source of minerals, and that's not always the kind of info people are after, but that's
but it's
it is
reality.
Important.
Yeah, it's reality.
The more clean you eat, the less medication you'll have to resort to. So and you've been able to, your epilepsy has been under very good control. And I think most of that is dietary, because as I've made the dietary changes, I've also lowered the dose of my medication, which is, that's just a personal decision, but it's been effective. So there's people who seem to be unable to control their health issues no matter what they do. Unfortunately, some cases are obviously more severe than others. That's also true, but yeah, you look amazing. Oh, well, thank you. You do. You really do. And I wouldn't want to follow you anywhere if you're running or cycling or even walking. Oh, probably. Come on, I'll walk in the mountains. I'll walk in the mountains. You don't have to walk fast. And there's so many nice areas to walk. It's true. We're very lucky. There's a lot to... For Christmas, I got myself a book of interesting walks around here. And I really want better weather so I can go try some of them. Because some of them, I can drive an hour,
on the weekend and do a 3-hour walk and have a great time. So
Yeah, and there is a lot around here. There's one of my favorite places to go to is Orlu, which is after Aix-les-Thermes. It's an area where you can come across a bear or you can come across a marmotte. A marmotte in English is it a groundhog?
No, I don't think so. It's like it lives in water, doesn't it?
A marmotte? No. They live sort of in. They have
maybe it's a
little holes
groundhog
in the
then.
rocks or the mountains, and then they come out, and they don't see very well. They come out in the spring and they whistle. That's their communication, but they don't have a great vision. But they always kind of stand up on their hind feet. And
Okay.
you see a lot of them in Orlu, and it's it's just
Cute little things.
Yeah, they're really cute. They are. You want to hug them. Fire almost chased one. My dog, she heard one. We were at Font-Romeu over the summer, and she heard this marmotte, and we had to coach her. We had to keep talking to her. Okay, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Stay
Right.
here. If she had gone after it, I'm not sure she would have come back because she would have probably tried
Right,
to
'cause
go
she's
in
a
their little
terrier. Yeah, she's
she
a
might have gone
terrier,
down
yeah.
after it. But
That would be exciting. The terrier going after the
marmotte.
yeah. Whoa.
But no, it's a beautiful mountain, and there's a refuge up there, so you can hike up there, and they have a gorgeous terrace, so you can have once you've gone from the parking lot to the refuge, I think it's 8 kilometers with about 800 to 1,000 meters of climbing, and then you can hang out on the terrace and have a glass of a cup of tea or a beer or
Whatever
whatever
you brought, yeah.
yeah
Yeah, because it's whatever you bring. I mean, up there.
but they also have a restaurant up there.
Oh,
Yeah,
they do?
Yeah, they have a bar and a restaurant, so you can get stuff up there.
Wow.
Yeah, and then down on the Ariège side, you have the Mont Calme, which is up to 3,000 meters, and at the top there's also a bar and a restaurant as well. So,
Oh, because-
and he has a piano up there in the refuge.
How cool.
Yeah. I think he helicoptered it up there. the tourism offices have been getting better.
They probably don't. And they're probably not used to having a lot of people stop over to say, where can I go running?
Running, well, now they are starting to. There's a place in Tarascon, near Tarascon, called Aulus-les-Bains that has a trail park.
Right.
And so they've mapped out all these different trails so you can go running. And they've graded them like you do ski slopes. So the green is easy, the blue is hard, the red is harder, and the black is the hardest one.
Oh, that's
so
good.
As they progress, they have more, up and down elevation change.
And that's from Aulus.
Aulus-les-Bains, and then there's one. And Luchon has a lot of running trails as well, and which is also a thermal station, so you can go. They have a vaporium afterwards. Yeah, they have like this little. It's like a giant steam bath that smells like sulfur because it's got properties
Natural.
that are proper healing properties, and you walk through it, so it's kind of cool. And then there's and in Argelès as well. There's a lot of running trails too. So
That's great. So if you indulge in a French food,
yeah,
you can indulge anything.
you can go have your.
Yeah. What would you pick?
Me, I would go to Lara and just hang out at the Chocolaterie Artisanale de Lara because their chocolate is. I've never had chocolate like theirs. I mean, they don't use any, any oils or animal fats or whatever. It's just they make their own
cocoa.
chocolate, and then they also make their own sugar from a praliné, which is ground almonds and hazelnuts, so it takes 20% less sugar to sweeten their chocolate, and it's just you really taste the chocolate. It's really
great.
good. Yeah,
That's
so
great.
I would hang out there.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. That has
My
been
pleasure.
It has been very, very fun to talk to you. I didn't know a lot of this stuff actually. I've known you for years.
Yeah.
I didn't know too much of this. So it's great. Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, isn't she amazing? She really gave great suggestions on where to go to enjoy your sport. In the Pyrenees, be it cycling, running, walking, snowshoeing, and you can enjoy great food and wine while you're doing it. Sounds like perfection to me. If all of that blew by too fast for you, go to joinusinfrance.com/52, where you'll find the links to all the places she mentions in the show. And while you're on the website, I'd love it if you'd remember to visit our Support the Show tab and learn about what you can do to keep the show going. That would be very nice. Thank you. Now, let me go to a listener question. Dave wrote, and he says, I have been a dedicated follower since you were on The Amateur Traveler with Chris. But where has Elise gone? She was a beloved and essential part of your wonderful show, and I hope she's okay. You are correct, Dave. She was an essential part of the show. Thank you also for, following the show and talking back to us. Lots of people listen to the show and never talk back, so it's great to hear from you. Now, Elise is fine, and I hope she'll come back on the show as often as her schedule permits. She has been incredibly generous with her time, but you have to understand that she works a lot as a tour guide, and there just aren't enough hours in the day. We started this show as an experiment to see if it could be done and if we could get an audience. Now, a year later, I can tell you that it worked. But for the show to continue going strong and, make progress and grow, I have to look for new opportunities to adapt to, changing realities. This is the first big change, but there might be some other big changes too along the line. And branching out is good, I think, because it's great for the show in the long run, and it's great for you too as a listener, because you'll be introduced to a broad selection of local tour guides in France. You'll get to hear them, get to know them, see if this is a person you'd like to tour with, and if you would rather tour on your own, that's fine. You'll get suggestions and hear about fun stories and places that you might not have known about. I think each tour guide that I interview will introduce a theme around which they love to organize their visits, their thing, their specialty, what they're passionate about. And I'm sure some of those people will strike a chord with you and make your next visit to France even better. So to me, what's not to love? I mean, it's just a great way to go. So stay tuned for my first tour guide interview next week. See, it's starting next week. So, well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you very much for listening to the show. Feel free to leave comments or questions. I'm always open and happy to hear from you. Au revoir, and talk to you next week.